Well, there's no time to waste. I have covered the entirety of Black Ops 3 Zombies, Infinite Warfare Zombies, and the only good thing about World War II Zombies, that being the story. And now I am covering the last Zombies game before the release of Cold War, Black Ops 4. However, this game is too grand to cover all in one video, so for this retrospective, it will be divided into two parts. The first part being focused on the new Chaos story, and the second being focused on the returning Ether story that is about to reach its conclusion. Kinda. So with that said, let's take a look at the first map, which is debatable between Voyage and Blood, but since it's the Chaos story, we are starting with Voyage of Despair.
Drowning in silence, breathing in violence, dying alone, I know you never knew me. I was sinking all the way down in darker, deeper, colder water.
Now bear with me, because not only is Voyage of Despair a tricky map to talk about on its own, but I also have to go over the many changes BO4 made from its last predecessor. First off, I'll start with the controls. Now everything controls mostly the same except for G-sliding. For those of you who are unaware of what this is, it was the insanely flexible sliding on Black Ops 3 that allows you to repeatedly slide to a location faster. While it was useful, I'm kinda glad it's not in the game. G-sliding was 99% not intentional on Treyarch's part, and it encourages the player to move around normally. However, one major change is the perk system. This is a big one. See, Treyarch didn't like the fact that perks outside of Jug, Quick Revive, Speed Cola, and Double Tap were never used, and I also think that was a problem too, since having clutch perks makes all of the other perks useless unless you use Perkaholic, which wasn't a thing before BO3. So for BO4, they decided to remove the clutch perks and allow for customization of perks. This was a great idea in theory, but not only are half the perks completely useless, but the other perks are clutch perks as well, such as Dying Wish, Time Slip, Victorious Tortoise, and Quick Revive if you're playing co-op. So while the new perk system could have been implemented better, it's definitely nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be. And I kinda like how they implemented Jug, Solo Quick Revive, and even Speed Cola. Every solo game, you're automatically allowed 3 downs in total, which is a very nice change since it was a little annoying at times having to run all the way back to Quick Revive after each game. Juggernog is immediately off the bat applied to you, sorta. See, instead of a 5-hit system, it's a permanent 4-hit system, which is a nice substitute. I know everyone lost their minds once they figured out Jug was in the game, but personally, I don't care whether it's in the game or not. As long as there's a proper health system, that's all that matters to me. Speed Cola activates once you buy all 4 perks, and I don't have much to comment on. It's a fine way to permanently add Speed Cola to the game without it taking a perk slot. The same cannot be said about Double Tap. Before I can explain that mess, I should mention what they did to Pack. Initially, it's the same thing, 5k for an upgraded weapon. However, for some reason that I cannot fathom, you have to repack it for 2,500 points 4 times in order to get it to its full power. This change literally does nothing but make Pack more expensive for the sake of making it more expensive. And how do you get Double Tap? You have to fully pack your weapon, meaning you have to spend 15k on a singular weapon to get it to do full damage. Wonderful. Regardless of how ridiculous Double Tap is, the substitution for Quick Revive, Jug, and Speed Cola are really nice. And when you think about it, these permanent 4 perks mixed with the 4 optional perks has a character equipped with 8 perks in a way. You still have the 4 main perks even though they're not in physical form. However, the new perk system allows for more variety. They could have done better with the perks themselves, but I actually really like this system. Along with the perks is a new ability called the Specialist ability. Once you charge your meter, you can go on a slaughtering spree with a specific specialist. I also like this change, since not only can you time it really well in a useful scenario, but you can also level it up throughout the game, which helps makes it more engaging to use. There's also the return of Gobblegums in the form of elixirs. I cannot understand why the community hates elixirs so much. They're literally the exact same thing as something like the Fate Enforcement cards for my W. You can choose which special ability you want to activate at any time instead of relying on basic RNG. This allows for more strategic plays. Goes without saying, but I don't mind the elixirs as well. And last but definitely least is the point system. Why? I genuinely don't see what's the point of lowering the amount of points you can get in a round. It does nothing but halt progression. So yeah, while I think there were some minor missteps with the perks and major missteps of Pack in the point system, Chug was on the right track and some of the changes I've actually come to appreciate. And for those of you who make the argument saying Black Ops 4 is bad because it doesn't feel like classic zombies, grow the fuck up. Now we can get started on the actual map, Voyage of Despair. This map is held as one of the best COD zombie maps of all time, and by that I mean everyone unanimously hates it. Yeah, this map is despised by the entire community, even though about 75% of it has probably ever played it before, let alone get to round 5. Sorry, I just hate the hive mind the community has. So yeah, I don't think this map is bad. I actually, dare I say it, like it. However, I do get some of the complaints and it's definitely not perfect. But enough stalling, let's begin our in-depth discussion of Voyage of Despair. As always, we'll start with presentation. Now, I've been a fan of COD Zombies for years now, and I never would have expected a zombie map to take place on a sinking Titanic, and let alone for it to work. But Treyarch performed miracles and delivered a perfect package presentation-wise. While the map doesn't have an obvious defining atmosphere like Jezebel or Blood, stuff like the lighting, accurate areas that perfectly resembles that of real ships, and the surprising amount of color for a ship location helps this map be pleasing to look at. Not to mention the interior areas such as the kitchen now full of evil goop or whatever looks sick. By the way, this is a completely minor, but can I just say that I love the box design for the story? So yeah, while the atmosphere itself is nothing breathtaking, the presentation is top tier. Now for easily the most underrated part of the map, the layout. I was so scared going into this map. I thought it would essentially be a GOROD 2.0 with most areas of the ship being way too cramped to traverse on higher rounds and have to rely on some sort of camping strat to get anywhere. I mean, the map takes place on a singular ship. However, I was genuinely surprised. While that holds true to some areas of the map, the spacing is just tight enough to make you feel like you're in an actual ship, but just open enough to allow for the map to, be fun. In fact, there's actually about 4 manageable training spots. How does a map set in a ship have more open space than the city of Stalingrad? I really need to stop talking about GOROD. Anyways, the layout of Voyage is really admirable and is actually spaced pretty fairly. Yeah, not much to say, the layout is great. Now we can finally get into the big boy stuff. The innovations. First, I'll go over the special enemies. First are the Catalyst. When I first found out that the special enemy types were coming to BO4, a rush of Exo Zombies and World War II Zombies PTSD kicked in. However, thank God these guys weren't implemented poorly. Catalyst Zombies do what they're intended to do. They shake up the gameplay and add a little flavor to it without becoming too much of an annoyance. These Catalysts can either be Fire Zombies who explode similar to the one in Shangri-La, Electric Zombies who can blind your screen, Poison Zombies that deal toxic damage, and Water Zombies who strengthen the health of other zombies around them. These guys' abilities sound annoying, but aside from maybe a few sneaky Fire Zombies here and there, the Catalysts just add a sprinkle of difficulty and help shake up the stellar gameplay seen in higher rounds, which despite the shortcomings of Black Ops 4 is something it does well. While we're on the topic of enemy types, let's get into the sub-bosses. First are Stokers. Despite their intimidating appearance, they're pretty easy to manage, which is balanced by their frequent spawn rate. Similar to Catalyst, they're a nice mechanic that will spice things up without being too much of an annoyance. And plus, having a sub-boss of the map be a mutated Stoker with fire abilities is an idea that's completely random but still a lot of fun. That's traditional Treyarch for you. However, the main sub-boss of the map are the Blightfathers. Right off the bat, can I just say I love their designs? They look so freakish and intimidating. And gameplay-wise, they're pretty cool. They have a diverse moveset and they will show no mercy to players unprepared. But if you're decently set up, then you should be fine. I am so proud of how far COD Zombies has come when it comes to sub-bosses. Now time for the weaponry you receive on this grand quest. Well, first are homunculi, the monkey bombs of the Chaos story. These feisty little creatures, once drawn, will attract all the zombies in the map to it, just like the monkey bombs. However, unlike the monkey bombs, these things will actually kill a huge number of zombies, overall making it more effective. Though it will never have the charm and nostalgia of the monkey bomb. You will be missed. Oh. No, never mind. And we also have the buildable shielded map making a return. Now this shield ability gives you a submachine gun you can use and it's kinda useful. It does significant damage and 150 shots for a shield weapon isn't bad. But this shield is kinda boring when compared to the Dragon Shield and shields we see later on in the season, but hey, it's no rocket shield so it has that going for it. There's actually a way to upgrade it, but I have not done that side quest because it's beyond tedious. Now time for the one weapon, the Kraken. Now, one huge gripe the community had with BOG zombies was how every one weapon aside from the ones in the last 2 maps were locked behind side quests and weren't available from the box off the bat. So Treyarch said screw it and did both. If you like spinning the box to get a one weapon, you can do that. However, if you're like me and you don't like relying on RNG and prefer doing side quests, then there's always a quest you can do to obtain said weapon. The Kraken is no exception, and its quest is pretty easy. The Kraken works as a super powerful auto shotgun basically. Imagine a base Thundergat with less of a punch but way more shots. And for a map with many cramped corridors, this is a perfect kind of weapon. There's no Apothecon Servant or Lightning Bolt, but I kind of feel it's refreshing there's no super OP one weapon that can completely carry you through the map. While the weapon is good, you still have to put in effort while using it, and for a map that Jason Blundell himself said he wanted to be hard, I think this was a good decision. Now for the upgrades. You can casually pack the Kraken, which makes it into a certified Blightfighter killer, but you can also upgrade it into an elemental version by picking up the body part of a specific catalyst, and I don't know how I feel about them. Since the upgrades aren't particularly useful, but they're really easy to get, and the ice element is pretty nice. And plus, it takes no effort to switch elements, meaning not only can you experiment with each variant in one match, but you basically have infinite ammo with this weapon, making it insanely useful for a high rounds attempt. I don't know, I think what Voidus brought to the table was some pretty cool concepts and ideas that were implemented seamlessly into the map. Voice of Despair's innovations are all welcomed. As for difficulty, while the map is really tricky to get used to, once you develop a sound strategy, it's actually not that bad despite Jason wanting this map to be hard. However, let's take a break from gameplay and discuss the story of Voice of Despair. Voice of Despair kicks off the new Chaos story that has nothing to do with Ethan, making it the first COD zombie story Chuck has ever made having nothing to do with the Easter story. It starts off about a new cast of characters sneaking into the cargo hold of the ship, intending to steal a strange item known as the Sentinel Artifact. Their plans are interrupted by an enemy, a part of the story's main antagonist known as the Order. He gets cornered by a group, so he unleashes the full power of the artifact, turning everyone on the ship and inadvertently himself into zombies. Our new group of characters fight off the undead, and now they have one task: to make it off the ship alive. While some may say a sinking Titanic as the location of the map is a little too bizarre, I think it's cool since it takes advantage of the early time period of the story, and it fits with the Chaos story's grand sense of adventure. I know this was a real event that killed many innocent people, but it's a real life tragedy that's had multiple movies made on it, and it happened over a century ago. I don't see how this location could offend anyone. As for the characters, the best way to put it is while there's certainly no premise, they are definitely no victors. These guys are actually likable despite their lack of complexity. First, I guess I'll start with Diego, my personal favorite. Diego is a less moral Nathan Drake. He's charming, always has witty remarks, and he loves adventure. However, the writers did a good job of making him feel like an actual human, since he's cautious and genuinely concerned in dangerous situations. Next is Bruno. I like Bruno. He's righteous about the possibility of death, he shows great respect to his allies, and his poor sense of humor just makes him brave. Shaw is also pretty entertaining. He's understandably freaks out about all the chaotic crap happening around him, which is pretty funny, and his obsession for chemicals is a fun little trait. And then there's Scarlet. Starting off with what I like about Scarlet and how she's responsible for most of the buildables in the map, which is awesome. And her serious tone is a nice break from the other three who mainly go for laughs. However, before I say anything, remember, I do have a fair share of main female leads that I do enjoy, so don't be coming up with any misogynistic allegations in the comments. Anyways, the thing I don't like about Scarlet is the fact that she whines non-stop and constantly talks badly about her other three allies. Remember, I am only talking about how these characters act in this specific map. So yeah, the main cast of characters are decent, however the thing about Voice of Despair's story is the fact that it's confusing. And not in a good way like the Ether story. No, in this story, it throws you in the middle of an adventure where you barely know anything about these group of characters and you don't know what the Sentinel Artifact is and you know nothing about the Order. This map just throws way too much at you storyline wise. Guys, it's me here. Sorry for the interruption, but this is post-video me, and yeah, I kind of forgot some information while I was scripting this video. So yeah, apparently there was a comic series that released before Black Ops 4 launch that I initially thought released like afterwards, like after Dead of the Night. But no, this comic series released before the game. And it explains a lot of stuff. It explains who Alistair is. It explains like he's like seeking, you know, these artifacts that like belong to the Order. He's trying to uncover their entire operation. And they're trying to hunt him. They explain how he met Bruno and the fact that Bruno got shot and was resurrected by the Scepter of Ra by Alistair. Yeah, it explained a lot of information that I forgot to mention. Like I said, I was planning on talking about the comics in my Ancient Evil section, but yeah, apparently it released before Voice of Despair, so I got some of my information wrong. I'm sorry for the interruption, But yeah, whenever you hear me say that the story like wasn't explained properly before Black Ops 4's launch, that's a lie. That's just misinformation. But yeah. Man, it's almost like there was supposed to be a map set before this that answered some of these questions. Anyways, while the story of Voice of Despair is way too much to take in, it still manages to make at least these characters pretty likable, and it does admittedly set up some mysteries as to what exactly the Order is and what it is they're up to. Now Easter egg time, baby. The Easter egg to this map is a mixed bag to me. See, parts of it are a lot of fun and can be pretty intense, such as the 4 challenges, the iceberg steps, and this Easter egg contains my second favorite Treyarch boss fight. But steps like the clock step and the planet step do nothing but halt the pacing and they're just overall tedious. While it is hard to learn and master, the Voice of Despair Easter egg isn't that bad. It can be a lot of fun with a friend. Me and my friend Fumble had a lot of fun and us completing it is what led to him getting the rest of the season. So yeah, overall I'd say it's a pretty good Easter egg, but I want to go more in depth with the boss fight. Once you complete all the main steps, you're immediately hyped up with an insane build-up once you teleport it inside of the iceberg, which looks really sick by the way. Once you interact with the Sentinel artifact, the iceberg floats into the sky with chilling music. Then the boss fight begins, and it's a pretty cool boss fight. The first phase has you fighting off waves of zombies, stalkers, and blightfighters, and it's a really fun phase that really puts a crack into work. The second phase has you doing the same thing in a more tight space, which gets intense and chaotic really fast. The third phase has you teleported to an even more tight space where you have to damage the eye by shooting it through tight narrow corridors full of zombies and stalkers. This phase is the most dynamic out of the 5, since you have to focus on keeping these zombies off your back while doing damage to the eye. If you make one wrong move in this tight scenario, you're facing a game over. I love how chaotic, cramped, and intense the third phase is. The fourth phase sees you doing up close damage to the eye, and it's not that good of a phase since it's pretty easy with homunculi. But then the fifth phase starts, and this is the most tense I've gotten in zombies since the Mephistopheles boss fight. The third phase is crazy, since endless amounts of blightfighters, stalkers, and zombies flood the ship, no pun intended, and the eye gets an ability that can end the game entirely. What can I say about the boss? I love it. It's cool, it's challenging, and its multiple different phases make it dynamic. Easily my third favorite fight in all zombies below Mephistopheles and the Corrupted Keeper. Once the boss is defeated, the crew members are restored back to normal people, where the Titanic starts sinking right as our characters see a clue that can lead them to Alistair, the person that they're looking for. The 4 make a run for it and occupy a lifeboat. They discuss where to go next, unaware of Bruno's glowing red forehead, meaning he's a part of the Order. Kinda. Which is a very cool twist, and it would have had way much more of an effect if we knew who the Order was and what their motives are. So yeah, the Easter egg to Voice of Despair is enjoyable in some parts, but aggravating in others, but it makes up for that with a really sick boss fight. In conclusion, Voice of Despair gets way more hate than warranted. I try to see this map from other people's perspective, but I don't see why people hate it so much. Its layout is hard to learn at first, but it's structured cleverly, the one weapons and sub-bosses are nice additions, the Easter egg is fun with fans, and the story info we do get from the map is good, but could have used way more explaining in certain areas to give the player more of a motivation and get invested. Voice of Despair is a good map, at least to me, and I'm giving it a 4 out of 5.
These must be the previous contestants. The bad ones.
Now that is a lot of gold.
Now for part 2 of the retrospective, 9. Now this map has a funny history. Before its release, many people thought this map was going to be the least interesting out of Voyage and Blood. But surprisingly, it ended up being the fan favorite of the map, with it being held as the best map in the season. Now I do enjoy this map, however not only do I think Voyage is underrated, but I think 9 is overrated. I swear I am not doing this on purpose. While 9 is a good map, it does have many strengths and weaknesses. What are those strengths? What are those weaknesses? Well, let me explain.
I swear I'm gonna catch that axe and shove it up your...
Starting with things presentation-wise, 9 continues the Chaos Story's grand-scale settings and has this map set in an ancient Colosseum. The general feel of this map is what makes everything work from the start. The crowds of people cheering you on, the ancient Greek monuments, the underground filled with decomposing fallen warriors. Everything looks like a blood-soaked arena and I love it. This type of feel for a map is something we've never seen in Zombies before, and it was very cool to see Treyarch take a leap like this in terms of setting. Yeah, the map looks great. However, the same cannot be said about the layout. Basically, there's 4 corners of the map. The surface of those corners are god monuments, and the underground section is comprised of a singular room, and then there's one big center area on both the surface and underground sections of the map, and that's it. I get it, it's an arena. They can't make it any bigger without it not making sense, but the layout is just too boring. There's really no interesting areas, and each of the towers and underground rooms all kind of feel the same. I will give props to Treyarch for the detail in each of these areas though, and like I said, it does feel like an actual arena. But the layout is just too boring to me. At least the spacing is pretty fair similar to Voyage, and the obvious training spots are made a little more difficult with the addition of the fire, which prevents any potential Kino stages in the map. Now time for the innovations. Catalysts and Blightfires all make a return, but replacing the Stokers are 2 new sub-bosses, both pretty similar to each other. First are Gladiators, armored enemies who will throw their axes at you. Much like the Stoker, they look cool, fit right at home with the map, and are easy to deal with despite looking intimidating. Their similar allies, the Brawlers, are the same thing, though they do look slightly cooler and are admittedly a greater challenge. Also, the Dogmen of this map are comprised of Tigers, who do also fit with the style of this map perfectly. So yeah, much like Voyage, the special enemy types are balanced and fit pretty well with the map. Next is the Wonder Weapon, the Death of Orion. I am mixed on this weapon. While it can kill a lot of zombies and its ammo count is fair, it just feels awful to use for some reason. It's a terrible save me weapon and it's just overall lackluster. However, one cool thing in this map is the new shield. Not only does it fit pretty well with the map style, but it's really useful for rapid fire ability and a sick melee weapon. This shield with Victorious Tortoise is a lifesaver. I guess the only thing left to talk about in this portion is the challenge system. While challenges inside of zombie maps are definitely not a new thing, this map does it pretty well. It actually makes you feel like you're in an actual arena trying to overcome difficult obstacles so you can please the crowd. However, I like to point out the challenge where you have to kill a Blightfighter while being yoinked by its tongue is literally impossible. So yeah, there are some cool things this map introduces, but it's a really big stretch to call it necessarily innovative. Now the story. The intro to this map sees our 4 characters being informed by a mystical voice that they must be tested before they gain access to the place Alistair might be being kept. They get stoned, much to Shaw's pleasure, and they wake up as gladiators inside of an arena. And this starts the events of 9. Yeah, nothing much happens in-game, and my stances of the characters are the same from Voyage, but there are some weird references to some sort of mansion and an unknown character named Godfrey that's mentioned. I swear, I think there was some story info we were supposed to get before the release of this map. That's very odd. So yeah, not a lot of story info added, which is a shame because some is definitely needed for the casual audience. Now time for the Easter egg. The Easter egg is kinda bizarre to me. It's the only Easter egg I know of that has a good sense of progression and pacing, but still manages to go on for way too long. I'm serious, this Easter egg drags. It never knows when to stop. It's not even like the steps are bad because they're not. In fact, some of them are kind of fun, but this egg is so exhausting because there's so many tedious and unnecessary steps. But does this map make up for that with a good boss fight? Well, I don't think I can judge this boss fairly. You see, me and Fumble went into the boss both equipped with Death of Alliance and fully packed Hellions. This boss was over really quickly. So yeah, while it may be a really easy fight with a good loadout, the boss still looks really awesome. You're fighting an undead elephant. Despite the fact I am a huge elephant lover, this is a pretty cool idea for a boss. It's Resident Evil Outbreak all over again. and you're not fighting one, but two elephants mixed with gladiators, tigers, and also brawlers. While this fight was easy in my case, it's still quite a spectacle, which actually kinda sums up the map for me. I'll get into that later. After the character's triumphant victory over the elephants, they're rewarded by being decapitated. And no, that's not a joke. This was admittedly a really cool outro cutscene and faked many people out into thinking the characters were actually dead. However, it should have been obvious they were fine considering the fact this was obviously in these characters' heads, but whatever. So yeah, the story of 9 isn't bad and it's admittedly a cool setup, but it's lackluster. The Easter egg to 9 isn't horrible, but it just goes on for way too long. In conclusion, 9 isn't the best of BO4, not even the best in the Chaos section. It does have a lot of promise though. The gladiator atmosphere and style is awesome, there's many cool spectacles during the Easter egg, the shield is pretty cool, and the challenge system is cool when it isn't BS. But there's barely any new story info, the one weapon isn't that great, the boss looks cool, but that's about it, and the layout is boring. I'm giving 9 a 3 out of 5.
Bleeding from the darkest bleeding heart. What is this I'm looking for? Who am I beyond this door? Show me something that I recognize. Show me answers to all this mystery.
Dead of the Night. You know, I went into Dead of the Night not knowing what to expect since the community seemed so mixed on it. So how do I feel about it? Well, it is easily one of my favorite Call of Duty zombie maps of all time. I loved Dead of the Night, and it is easily in my top 5. Easily my favorite map in the game actually. I don't really know how the overall community feels on it, but one thing I do know is there was understandably not a lot of buzz when Dead of the Night dropped. That was because the map was easily the worst marketed Call of Duty Zombies map of all time. Somehow even more poorly marketed than Attack of the Radioactive Thing. Why? Well, there's multiple reasons. First being the dying interest in BO4 due to its negative reception. Second, the lack of trailers or marketing the map got. And last but not least, the fact that the map was accidentally leaked and dropped out of nowhere. Which is a shame because Dead of the Night definitely deserves more attention. Fun fact, Dead of the Night was actually supposed to be a default map along with Voyage and Blood, but there was trouble of the celebrities getting their lines done on time, so the map was pushed back to DLC 1 and 9 was made a default map. And looking back on it, this makes so much sense since having a prequel as DLC 1 is not a good idea, and this map's expansiveness fits that of a default map like Shadows or Transit. Yes, despite its quality, Transit is pretty massive. But it's time I backed up my opinion. Why do I hold Dead of the Night to such a high standard? Well, let me explain. Presentation wise, this map instantly excels. This is next to Gorod, Shaolin, and Blood for my favorite atmosphere in a zombies map. Just look at it. Keeping up Chaos' streak in great settings, this map takes place in a mansion in the middle of a spooky forest. That's right, this map is going full Resident Evil mode on us. The mansion looks beautiful and grand, and everywhere in this massive building is blood-stained walls and destroyed furniture and decorations. And the outside looks just as great. It's spooky, dark, eerie, and nicely detailed. This is the definition of a Halloween map, which is sad because if it had been a default map like it was supposed to be, it would have released right in time for Halloween, which probably was the original intent. And the spooky atmosphere isn't just in the visuals. The soundtrack and enemy types all play a role in making the map feel badass. And complete side note by the way, but the Easter egg song in this map, Mystery, is now one of my favorite songs to listen to. Thank God Kevin Sherwood is coming back. Now seeing as how this is a mansion, you would imagine that this map is probably tight and cramped since you're mostly confined to an interior building. While that is true in some areas, this mansion is mostly spaced out, which allows you to move freely on later rounds and not have to fall back on some camping strategy in order to survive. The outside area is much more spacious as well. I don't know what to say, it just feels good to move around, and just like Voyage and 9, Sherlock does the location justice by having Alistair's mansion to look and feel like an actual mansion. Unlike 9, this map actually feels pretty big, so yeah, Dead of the Night's layout is really good. Now the innovations. Now before I start talking about stuff like the wonder weapon or sub-bosses, let me mention that Dead of the Night's greatest strength is its greatest weakness. Remember when I said this map was expansive? Well, while the overall size of Dead of the Night adds to its expansive nature, the thing that truly elevates this map is the amount of things there are to do. This is the Zetsubo of Black Ops 4, except on steroids. However, do you remember the reason people don't like Zetsubo? Because there's a gazillion things you have to remember to do, and in Dead of the Night, it's the part locations. Dead of the Night has over 60 part locations. There are so many locations and puzzles you have to remember, and learning this map almost made my brain explode. The shield in this map is the same one from Void, so it's not really worth going over. However, what is the Silver Bullets upgrade. By finding multiple parts around the map, you can build a silver bullet station that increases the damage of your gun, and it makes it more effective against werewolves on this map, which is awesome. Not only that, but you can always refill your ammo for 4,000 points, which is super helpful. Now for the sub-bosses. Along with the return of Catalyst are the introduction to an exclusive enemy in the map, the Nosferatu, otherwise known as just vampires. Not only do they look cool, and the fact that those vampires in the zombies map is the coolest thing ever, but they are not as broken as people say. The only advantage these guys have is the fact that they're more quicker than the undead, but that's the only real advantage they have. They don't have too great of a spawn rate, so just make sure to take them out once you see them and they shouldn't be too much of a problem. Unlike their much more lethal brethren, the Crimson Nosferatu, the thing that makes these guys dangerous is the fact that they have an animation where they jump on your character and have a good snack. You're not invincible during this, so it's very possible one cinematic attack from these guys will get you killed. But I've only had this happen to me once in my entire playing time of Dead of the Night, so it's not too big of a deal. Replacing the Blightfathers are werewolves. Yep, freaking werewolves. This should be enough to instantly sell you in the map, but much like Blightfathers, these guys can be dangerous if you're unprepared, but in most cases you should be able to manage them rather easily if you know what you're doing. And then there's the one weapon of the map, Alistair's Annihilator. I'm in love with this thing. This is personally my favorite one weapon. It's not the best or the most useful, but it's my favorite. This special revolver can be fully upgraded to Alistair's Fury, and it's a beast. It shoots huge shots of plasma at enemies, and the destructive blast this thing causes is pure satisfaction. And I haven't even gotten to its elemental attacks. A charged shot from this weapon emits a large attack capable of demolishing hordes, making it an absolute beast. Plus, it just looks cool. This weapon just feels so great to use, and it's like the ray gun's older and more successful brother. Though I suppose that would technically just be the Mark II. So yeah, the map also has a wooden stake you can obtain. From what I heard is pretty useful. The new material this map brings is just so amazing and all of it works. Though it may be just a little annoying to try to learn it all. Now we can talk story. You should already be aware this is a prequel map and takes place before the events of Voyager 9, and it has a pretty simple story. A knockoff Indiana Jones, a fraud, and this guy are all guests at a party hosted by Alistair inside of a luxurious mansion. Obviously, Alistair is the father of Scarlet for those of you who are not following along. We soon find out that Alistair has been kidnapped by his butler, now turned Order member, Godfrey, my favorite character in the Chaos storyline. Godfrey heads back upstairs, and the other two characters ask him of Alistair's whereabouts right when the evils of the Sentinel artifact are released, transforming the poor party guests into zombies. However, the four characters are protected by the safe barrier Godfrey recently drew up, and are now tasked with surviving the onslaught of evil creatures. Now, I don't know much about the other two characters, not even their names, but I do know about Godfrey, who is my favorite. Godfrey is a butler who's unsatisfied with his life of servitude and wishes to do something with his life. However, as shown in the music video, he arrives to Alistair's mansion one night only to find an Order member pointing a revolver at him. Godfrey is killed but resurrected with the Scepter of Ra, and he's now an involuntary Order member, meaning he's unknowingly a puppet at the Order's disposal. Godfrey starts struggling with the inner demons he struggled to repress all these years that take the form of Dark Godfrey, his Order form. We hear Godfrey talk to the other characters in a very polite and patient way, but there's subtle hints he's not very fond of these guys, especially the fraud. Godfrey is such a dynamic character, and his struggle for dominance over his own mind helps explore how exactly the Order's control works on a person. As for the overall plot, we don't find out very much, which might be disappointing since this is labeled as a prequel, but it wasn't made to be one, so I don't really hold its lack of explanations over it. Now, the Easter egg to Dead of the Night is probably the weakest part of the map. The steps aren't bad, but they're definitely not exciting nor memorable, and just like the base map, there are so many locations you have to remember, they will literally drive you crazy. And sadly, while the boss looks pretty cool and the concept of an invisible werewolf is terrifying, the boss isn't that exciting either. It's pretty damn straightforward and easy. But then the Easter egg instantly redeems itself by having one of the best outro cutscenes in zombies in my opinion. The characters all discover the Sentinel artifact and marvel at it in confusion. While they're distracted, Godfrey loses the battle against his inner demons over his mind, and he slaughters each of the characters while finally speaking his mind on how he truly feels about them.
What now? What the hell does this mean?
It means you are not worthy. Witch! Ragged! Pompous ass! Ah, bastard!
Godfrey then gets shot in the back by Scarlet, who makes a surprise appearance, and before she can get any answers out of the dying man, Godfrey succumbs to his wounds and dies. Scarlet leaves the Flaming Manor and chases after her father's captors with a pretty cool car chase, but she's unsuccessful in rescuing her dad.
Dearest Scarlet, if I have already fallen prey to the Order, these are the only people I trust to help you stop them.
And thus, the events of Voids of Despair are now set up. Wow. Starting with the story, while not too many much needed revelations about the plot are revealed, seeing the events of Alistair's capture was pretty sick, and I love the character of Godfrey. And the outro cutscene is amazing. However, the Easter egg does fall flat with maybe one or two fun steps in a pretty boring boss fight. In conclusion, I obviously loved Dead of the Night. The spooky atmosphere is done really well in my opinion in terms of location details, soundtrack, and enemy types. Speaking of enemy types, I felt they were fun and do a great job of mixing up the gameplay. The Alistair's Fury is a godsend, the story is pretty cool and sets up Voyage decently, and the Easter egg is kinda lackluster, but the pros easily outweigh the bad, which is why Dead of the Night earns a personal 5 out of 5 from me. One of my personal favorite maps of all time.
Show me somewhere I can clearly be my mystery. Where was it you were before? Who are you and where are you now? Show me someone that will never die like me. I'll show you something that is always alive and dying to find it. Mine is a mystery.
Ancient Evil, the last stop in our chaotic journey. See what I did there? Now, I initially thought Sherlock was aware this would be the final chaos map in the game, but apparently there was supposed to be 2 more, which means the story was accidentally left incomplete. That kinda sucks. However, this map certainly does feel somewhat like a finale since it goes all out, and it's a fan favorite of BO4 along with 9. However, unlike 9, I don't feel like Ancient Evil is overrated, and I think its praise is well warranted. But how do I feel specifically about Ancient Evil? Well, let me explain. One thing you'll immediately notice about the map is its stunning scenery. Yeah, we went from the sinking Titanic to an ancient Colosseum to a spooky mansion to the lost underground city of Delphi. What is there that I can even say that the screen doesn't tell you already? This map feels extremely grand, it's stunning to look at, and it just feels epic. Just like Origins actually. And the map layout is another win for Treyarch. It's not exactly open and spaced out, but BO4 does a great job at having the areas of the map properly spaced without it feeling like one big training circle. Well, except for 9. And as for size, I'd say that Ancient Evil is just barely big enough to classify it as a properly sized map. So yeah, sorry this segment was short, but there's not a lot to say about this map in terms of layout. It feels grand and properly spaced out as many zombies map like this should. Now time for the innovations Ancient Evil brings. I'll start with the most important part of the map, which is the shield, Apollo's will. The shield of this map, just look at it. Not only does that look awesome, but it is insanely useful in tight situations. There's also a new equipment attack, the Pegasus Strike. This little contraption summons a freaking Pegasus to aid you in your battle and completely destroys all nearby zombies. As you could imagine, it's pretty useful. Challenges also come back, but in a pretty cool way. In this map, instead of immediately claiming your reward, you can choose to hold off on it and keep doing challenges to upgrade how good your reward is going to be. I really love this change. It makes it much more fun to go for a rare reward. Now for the good old wonder weapons. In this map, you have 4 different upgradable weapons, the usual sign of a great map. I was originally planning on covering these weapons individually, but even though they play somewhat differently, they're all as equally useful. The regular shots are insta-kills to your target with the exception of the brute of the map, but a charge shot will completely annihilate a hood if you're in a tight spot. My only problem with these weapons is the fact that I feel they run out of ammo way too easily. Other than that, they're alright, but I should probably add that up until now while I'm scripting the video, I just realized that the versions of the wonder weapons we were using weren't even the fully upgraded weapons, so take everything I just said with a grain of salt. As for the sub-bosses, along with the return of the Catalysts and Blightfighters are skeletons dressed in armor equipped with a sword and a shield. Aside from the fact they look cool, they're mainly just zombies with more health. Unlike the main sub-boss of the map, now bear with me, the Gaganese? I don't know how to pronounce that. This 6-armed brute looks pretty awesome, but he's not all that exciting. He's not difficult, but he's not any fun to go against. He's pretty easy to take down, and he's mainly just a waste of good ammo. As for the difficulty, this map is pretty balanced. I feel the easy brute, spacious layout, and the useful shield balance out with the okay wonder weapons. The story of Ancient Evil takes place directly at the 9, and now possessing the knowledge they need, they enter to a secret entrance into the underground city of Delphi. They are guided to the Oracle, who begs the characters to set her free right when she loses control over the zombies. Our characters get to work, and on their quest they encounter a helpful Pegasus who aids them, but then it's wounded by Perseus, the boss of the map. Now, I really like the mystery surrounding the Oracle, and how she slowly reveals more and more about her backstory. It makes the map all the more engaging. As for the characters, I'm proud to say that they're really good this time around. Not only has their bond grown stronger, but Scarlet is now actually likable since she's kind to her fellow allies and isn't whining about something 24/7. It may have taken a few maps, but this map is where our characters are at their peak, and they're honestly a pretty solid crew. Now Easter egg time. The Easter egg to Ancient Evil is meh. Yeah, the steps aren't that interesting nor fun. While I was neutral on Dead of the Night's Easter egg quest, Ancient Evil's quests are full of steps that are extremely boring or just plain tedious. However, there is one amazing thing about this Easter egg though, the Bruno and Shaw cutscene. At the completion of a certain step, the 2 characters are teleported inside of a room and only the players playing as Shaw and Bruno can see it. And it's a pretty big cutscene.
Stop resisting. He has to die. Now do it! Kill him, Bruno. Make him ours.
Bruno? What are you doing? No! Please! Bruno!
Yep, just like that, Shaw is now converted into an Order member. Just like the comics, we saw Bruno undergo a similar fate where he was shot in the forehead and resurrected by Alistair of the Scepter. So anyone who's resurrected with the Scepter is automatically made an involuntary Order member. We obviously saw this with Godfrey as well. This cutscene is sick, and something about Bruno being forced to kill a trusted friend of his as he pleads and screams for mercy is just messed up. Especially since Shaw is pretty likable. Shortly after, our characters are teleported to Mount freaking Olympus where Perseus is awaiting them. He corrupts the Pegasus and forces him to kill our characters. So, yeah. These characters are in Mount Olympus fighting off a corrupted Pegasus and a demigod. This couldn't possibly be more epic. In a lot of ways, this fight reminds me of Golod. They're both really cool spectacles, but the fight themselves aren't that special. While this is way more extreme in Golod's case, the Pegasus fight is pretty boring. You shoot the Pegasus until it's stunned and then you just whack it with your specialist. You do this a few times and then you fight Perseus, who's the exact same thing except he's somehow easier. So yeah, the eyeball from Voids of Despair is the best boss in a Chaos story by a landslide. So our characters are teleported back to the Oracle and she's freed. She leads them in the direction of Alistair, but not all is as it seems.
No, it can't be.
There is still so much that you can teach me.
Yep, the Oracle is Medusa, which was slightly hinted at, and Alistair is confirmed dead, having been killed by Medusa. I find the twist of her being Medusa pretty sick since Perseus overall is known for having killed Medusa. Medusa sets forth to continue the Order's work, Scarlet's fate is undetermined, and half the crew are now involuntary Order members. The end. In all seriousness, it's such a shame the story left off on a cliffhanger since Sherlock assumed they would be able to continue the story. Well, they weren't. Yep, the story that left off on a really gripping cliffhanger is discontinued, and the story that comes to a pretty solid conclusion is continued. Yay. This is such a shame since the Chaos story showed great promise and would have likely turned out great if given more time and maps. But people just weren't interested, which was due to multiple reasons. I even made a video about it, but the main reasons being the poor reception of BO4, the confusing nature of the story, and the fact it showed a game of Ether. I really enjoyed the Chaos story and fumbled it too, but oh well I guess. This is now the third Call of Duty zombie story to end right when things were getting spicy. It's unfair that World War II Zombies is the only non-Ether story to receive a proper conclusion. So yeah, that about does it for the story segment. In conclusion, Ancient Evil is a really solid map. There's plenty of things to do, the story info is nice, the map looks great, and the characters are at their all-time high. I'm giving Ancient Evil a 5 out of 5. So yeah, that were all the Chaos maps. I really enjoy Voyage, 9 is alright, and I'm in love with Dead the Night, and Ancient Evil is pretty solid. The story of Chaos is underrated, and I really hope it receives some sort of continuation in the future. However, I'm saving my final rating of the game for Part 2 of the Retrospective that will be covering the Ether maps. Part 2 of the BO4 Retrospective will be my final look at COD Zombies before the release of Cold War. I will see you guys next time. So I guess in other words...
To be continued.